room is quiet in a way that only command rooms ever are. Paris, late evening, mid-May 1940. Lamps cast soft cones of light across large maps pinned to the walls. France in pale blue, borders drawn with a confidence earned from the last war. The headquarters of the French High Command feels insulated from urgency. Telephones sit idle. Cigarette smoke hangs unmoving in the air. At the center of the room stands Maurice Gamelin, Commander-in-Chief of the French Army. He does not pace. He studies reports with the posture of a man who believes time is still on his side. Outside, Paris continues its routines. Cafes are open. Trains run on schedule. Nothing here suggests collapse. A staff officer clears his throat and places a folder on the table. The label is plain. The contents are not. Reports from the Ardennes. The Ardennes is not supposed to be decisive. That assumption underpins everything in this room. The terrain, dense forest, narrow roads, is considered unsuitable for large armored formations. Doctrine says so. Experience agrees. The plan, refined for years, expects the main German thrust to come north, through Belgium, where French and British forces are already moving to meet it. But the reports contradict that certainty. Forward units describe German armor moving faster than projected, bridges taken intact, columns advancing not in probing formations, but in force. One message uses a phrase that draws quiet frowns around the table. Continuous armor movement. An intelligence officer suggests caution. These could be reconnaissance elements. Another officer counters, the numbers don't match reconnaissance patterns. A third reminds the room, gently, that doctrine does not support this scale of advance through the Ardennes. The disagreement is professional, restrained. No one raises their voice. The problem is not panic. The problem is disbelief. A telephone rings. Gamelin listens, nods once, and replaces the receiver. He says nothing immediately. When he does speak, his tone is measured. "Prepare a draft order," he says. "Redeployment options only." Not execution, options. The decision space tightens around a single question. Is this real or noise? The order is written, then paused. Staff officers debate wording. To commit reserves southward would weaken the forces advancing into Belgium. Forces already engaged, already moving. To delay risks conceding initiative if the reports are accurate. Gamelin hesitates. He is not indecisive by temperament. He is cautious by design. His career has been shaped by the memory of 1914, of rushing forward into catastrophe. He believes wars are lost by recklessness more often than by delay. Another call arrives. The voice on the other end is insistent now. German armor has reached the Meuse. Crossing attempts are underway. The room grows quieter. This is the moment where the war still has elasticity. France retains numerical superiority. Reserves exist. Roads are open. Time, measured in hours, is still available. But certainty is not. Gamelin authorizes revisions. The order is refined again. Clarifications are added. The language remains conditional. The decision is not to act yet. The decision is to wait for confirmation. The order does not move. By the time confirmation arrives, it arrives in the wrong form. Reports now describe bridgeheads established. Not attempts, successes. German units are across the river. Communications from forward French formations turn fragmented, urgent. Words like penetration and breakthrough appear with increasing frequency. The order, finally released, begins moving through channels that are already congested. Units receive it late. Some receive fragments. Others receive nothing at all. The Germans do not wait. Armored columns push west. exploiting gaps that were supposed to be theoretical. The carefully balanced French deployment, designed to fight a war of fronts, begins to unravel from the inside. What collapses first is not a line, it is coherence. Back in Paris, the room feels unchanged, the same maps, the same lamps. But the information arriving now carries a different weight. Each update closes another door. Staff officers exchange looks they do not verbalize. No one says the word lost. Not yet. Gamelin stands silently, absorbing the reports. The order that might have redirected the war sits on the table, its relevance fading by the minute. Outside, France still believes the battle is being fought where it was expected to be fought. Inside this room, a realization begins to settle. Slow, heavy, undeniable. The war has already shifted, and the delay that felt prudent now feels irreversible. Dawn breaks quietly over northeastern France. Inside a regional command post near Laon, officers sip cold coffee while waiting for confirmation that never seems to arrive. Maps are spread across tables, pins marking positions that are already becoming obsolete. The air smells of paper, sweat, and stale tobacco. Telephone lines hum, but no one is speaking urgently yet. A liaison officer studies a message stamped urgent hours earlier. It orders limited redeployment, conditional upon further verification. The language is cautious, almost polite. Outside the bunker, convoys idle, engines off. Crews wait beside vehicles, helmets resting on knees. No one has been told to move. Time is still passing. Mid-morning brings a different tone to the messages. German units are no longer probing. They are advancing in depth. French forward formations report being bypassed rather than engaged. Supply routes are threatened. Requests for clarification multiply. Inside the command post, arguments sharpen. One officer insists the order must be executed immediately, interpretation be damned. Another warns that unauthorized movement could fracture coordination with neighboring units. A third raises a quieter concern. If reserves move south now, the northern front may be left dangerously thin. The debate is no longer about doctrine, it is about responsibility. No one wants to be the officer who misreads the situation and causes collapse elsewhere. Everyone waits for confirmation from above. Confirmation that is itself delayed by distance, bureaucracy, and disbelief. A decision space opens, narrow and fleeting. Early afternoon. A senior commander finally speaks the words no one wanted to authorize earlier. Hold position until further orders. The rationale is simple. Maintain coherence. Avoid panic. Prevent fragmentation. The effect is catastrophic. By choosing order over initiative, the command freezes forces that should already be moving. Units capable of sealing gaps remain stationary. Armored reserves that could have contested crossing sit idle, engines cold. The decision is spoken calmly. No raised voices, no visible anger. But the moment it is issued, the war's direction hardens. The initiative passes fully and permanently to the enemy. The first undeniable consequence arrives before evening. A field report breaks through the layered channels without polish or restraint. A French division has been outflanked. Communications severed, rear elements under fire. The Germans are no longer at the river, they are beyond it. Another report follows, then another. The command post grows loud, not with shouting, but with overlapping messages. Telephones ring continuously. Maps are revised faster than pins can be moved. Officers realize something unsettling. Even if new orders are issued now, execution will lag behind reality. Roads are clogged, units are misaligned, coordination has degraded, the window has closed. As night falls, the command post settles into an eerie calm. The conversation's slow. Officers speak in shorter sentences. No one speculates anymore. They record, they acknowledge, they forward. Outside, retreating columns begin to appear on roads meant for advance. No orders announce this movement. It happens organically, quietly. Inside, someone finally asks the question that has hovered all day. How did this happen so fast? No one answers. The truth is already forming, though no one says it aloud. The disaster was not caused by surprise alone, but by delay multiplied by authority. And tomorrow the consequences will no longer be abstract. Paris, very early morning. The city wakes without knowing it has already fallen behind the war. Inside a secure communications room, clerks replace exhausted operators. Night reports are stacked neatly, bound with string. Someone opens a window slightly to let out the smoke. Church bells ring in the distance. Routine, comforting, almost mocking. At high command, the night's chaos has been reduced to summaries. Losses are listed clinically. Positions updated with red pencil marks. The map still looks orderly, too orderly. A senior officer pauses, hand hovering over a cluster of pins near Sedan. He hesitates, then moves them back a few centimeters. It is an act of optimism, not accuracy. The morning brief begins without drama. German armor continues westward. French units are disengaging under pressure. Communications are inconsistent. The northern armies, advancing into Belgium as planned, are now exposed on their southern flank. A staff officer raises a possibility no one wants to examine too closely. If the German thrust continues unchecked, the main French and British forces could be cut off entirely. The room stiffens. That outcome is unthinkable, not tactically but psychologically. The plan was built to prevent exactly this scenario. Accepting it would mean admitting that the foundational assumptions of the campaign were wrong. Political pressure enters quietly. Civil authorities want reassurance. Allies want clarity. No one wants to hear uncertainty. Gamelin listens, expression unchanged. He asks for updated estimates. How fast are the German columns moving? How long before they reach the coast? The answers are hedged. Estimates vary. Everyone senses that accuracy is slipping out of reach. Late morning brings the most consequential discussion yet. A proposal is raised, controversial, dangerous, but still possible. Withdraw the northern armies before the corridor closes. Abandon the advance. Sacrifice ground to preserve force integrity. The cost would be enormous. Political fallout, Allied trust, the psychological impact of retreat, but it could save the army. Silence follows. Gamelin considers the proposal. This is not a battlefield choice, it is a national one. Withdrawal would look like defeat before defeat is officially declared. He declines. The order is never issued. Instead, existing movements are allowed to continue, pending further clarification. The northern armies keep moving forward, into a narrowing space. The decision is subtle. It does not feel like refusal. But it commits hundreds of thousands of troops to a geometry they cannot escape. At that moment, the campaign becomes a trap. The shock does not arrive as a single event. It arrives as convergence. German spearheads reach key road junctions. Reports confirm crossings that sever lateral movement. Allied units begin encountering enemy forces where none were expected, behind them. Messages from field commanders change in tone. Requests turn into warnings. Warnings turn into statements of fact. We are being enveloped. The realization spreads unevenly, officer by officer, unit by unit. There is no announcement, no siren. Just the slow understanding that movement options are disappearing. In Paris, the map finally changes shape. Lines bend inward. The neat geometry collapses. Someone removes pins entirely. That evening, the high command room is subdued. The air is heavy with exhaustion and something else. Recognition, not panic, recognition. No one speaks of blame, not yet. There will be time for that later. What matters now is containment, damage control, survival. Outside the room, the public still believes the war is unfolding according to plan. Newspapers carry cautious headlines. Officials speak of fluid situations. Inside, the truth is clearer. The delayed order was not a single failure, it was a sequence, each hesitation reinforcing the next, until action itself became impossible. The war has crossed a threshold. France still has an army, but it no longer has freedom of movement, and freedom, once lost, does not return quietly. Northern France, late afternoon. A narrow road bends through farmland now churned into dust. Columns of French and British troops move in opposing directions, some advancing out of habit, others retreating by instinct. No signs mark this as a turning point. No announcement declares crisis. At a forward headquarters near Arras, officers stand around a map tacked hastily to a wooden wall. The paper is torn at the edges. Pencil marks overlap. Someone has written a note in the margin, routes uncertain. The quiet here is deceptive. It feels like waiting, when in fact, options are already disappearing. Reports arrive that no longer fit into the established framework. German units are appearing where no enemy was expected. Allied formations attempting lateral movement are running into resistance from the rear. Requests for air support pile up, many unanswered. A British liaison officer raises his concern carefully. If the corridor continues to narrow, withdrawal to the coast may become the only option. A French commander responds with visible strain. Withdrawal was never part of the operational language. There are no prepared orders, no synchronized plan. They request guidance from higher command. The response is delayed. In Paris, discussions are still framed as containment. At the front, officers are beginning to think in terms of escape. The mismatch grows dangerous. As evening approaches, a local commander makes a choice that will define the next phase of the war. Without explicit authorization, he orders limited units to pull back toward the west, seeking open roads, usable bridges, anything that still offers movement. It is not a coordinated retreat, it is a survival decision. The act itself fractures cohesion. Units following orders from above continue forward. Units acting on ground reality begin withdrawing. The front dissolves into fragments operating on incompatible assumptions. This is the point of no return. Once unity of movement is lost, it cannot be restored under pressure. The shock arrives after nightfall. German armor closes key junctions. Motorized infantry secure road networks with methodical efficiency. The corridor tightens visibly on maps updated in real time. Radio messages turn desperate. Some never reach their destination. Allied commanders realize, almost simultaneously, that they are no longer maneuvering against the enemy. They are maneuvering around him, inside a shrinking perimeter. The war has shifted from campaign to containment. Near midnight, the front settles into an uneasy stillness. Fires burn in abandoned vehicles. Soldiers dig shallow positions without knowing if they will hold them. No one discusses strategy anymore, only distance, time, and direction. In Paris, the High Command receives confirmation of what can no longer be denied. The northern armies are in danger of encirclement. The delayed order that once seemed cautious now reveals its full cost. Not as a single error, but as a cascade. The question is no longer how to stop the Germans. It is how many men can still be saved. Coastal northern France, early morning. A thin mist rolls in from the channel. softening the outlines of towns and roads that now carry too many men. Along a narrow causeway, columns slow to a crawl. Trucks overheat. Horses stand sweating in harness. Soldiers wait beside ditches, helmets tipped low, listening for engines they can't see. At a temporary headquarters in a converted schoolhouse, maps have been folded so many times the creases dominate the paper. Chalk dust coats the floor. A single radio crackles intermittently, then falls silent again. No one calls this a retreat. Not yet. The morning brief is short and incomplete. German spearheads have reached the coast at multiple points. The corridor behind the Allied armies is no longer theoretical. It is severed. What remains are pockets of movement, uncertain routes, and diminishing fuel. A senior officer points to the coastline. "Ports," he says. "We need ports." Another officer replies quietly, "So do they." Requests move upward. Permission to disengage, authority to prioritize withdrawal, coordination for naval evacuation. Each request carries risk. To approve one is to acknowledge the truth publicly. The responses arrive slowly. Some never arrive at all. In Paris, the political cost of admitting encirclement weighs heavily. Allies are listening. Civilians are watching. Words are chosen carefully. Orders are not. Late morning, a decision is finally spoken, but not from where it should have come. Local commanders receive word through informal channels. Prepare for evacuation contingencies. The language is deliberately vague. No formal order bears a signature. No responsibility is clearly assigned. The effect is immediate and chaotic. Units begin converging on coastal towns independently. Roads clog. Command structures blur. Priority becomes proximity. Whoever arrives first boards first. This is the moment when strategy gives way to arithmetic. Space, time, capacity. Once evacuation becomes the implicit objective, the campaign is over. What remains is extraction. By afternoon, German artillery can be heard in the distance. Aircraft appear overhead, sometimes friendly, sometimes not. Soldiers look up instinctively, then back to the road, as if eye contact might invite fate. At the ports, docks strain under weight they were never designed to carry. Ships arrive, load, depart, and return under fire. Schedules dissolve. Control becomes improvised. Messages from units trapped inland turn increasingly stark. Unable to move. Ammunition low. Enemy on all sides. Some messages end mid-sentence. As evening falls, a strange calm settles along the beaches. Men sit in long lines, rifles across their knees, staring at the horizon. No one speaks loudly. There is no cheering when ships appear, only a subtle tightening of posture. In Paris, officials receive reports framed as successful withdrawals and orderly operations. The language feels hollow even as it is written. The delayed order that began this chain of events is no longer discussed. It has become irrelevant. Consequences have moved beyond decision-making into endurance. France's army still exists, in fragments on beaches, in pockets of resistance. But the war that was planned no longer does. And what comes next will not be decided in quiet rooms. Dunkirk outskirts, just before sunrise. The sea is flat, almost indifferent. A pale light stretches across the horizon, revealing lines of men that seem to have no beginning or end. Boots sink slightly into wet sand. Rifles are held carefully, as if even noise might disrupt whatever fragile order remains. There is no formal command post here, only clusters of officers standing apart, scanning the water, counting ships that are not yet visible. A wind carries the smell of fuel and smoke from inland. No one gives a speech. No one explains the plan. Because there is no plan, only a process. Inland, German forces consolidate rather than rush. Artillery positions are adjusted. Reconnaissance, probes, test. Allied lines without committing fully. It is deliberate. Patient. Among Allied officers, a question circulates quietly. Why haven't they finished it? Some believe the enemy is regrouping. Others suspect air superiority concerns. No one is certain, and certainty no longer exists as a currency. At the beaches, organization improves only because chaos has exhausted itself. Units are grouped by proximity, not by formation. Ranks matter less than numbers. A naval officer arrives with clipped instructions. Boarding will prioritize capacity, not nationality. Wounded first. Then whoever can be moved fastest. There are objections. They fade quickly. Mid-morning, a decision is made that will define the remainder of the operation. To maintain order, commanders instruct troops to hold their positions on the beach rather than attempt inland counterattacks, however tempting the lull may seem. The reasoning is simple. Movement risks collapse. Stillness preserves extraction. It is a defensive decision masquerading as discipline. By choosing not to contest ground that morning, Allied forces surrender any remaining chance of reopening the corridor. The perimeter becomes fixed. The beaches become the battlefield. This is the final shift, from war of maneuver to war of endurance. There is no going back inland now. The shock arrives from above. Aircraft roar overhead, first distant, then unmistakably close. Bombs fall not in saturation, but in patterns, targeting choke points, ships, concentrations of men waiting in unnatural stillness. Explosions throw sand and bodies into the air. Smoke obscures the shoreline. Lines break, then reform with grim discipline. Ships are hit, some burn. Others withdraw, damaged, leaving gaps that cannot be filled quickly enough. For the first time, the waiting itself becomes lethal. Men realize that survival no longer depends on orders, but on timing, being in the right place when a ramp lowers, when a ship pulls alongside, when a window opens and closes in minutes. As the day wears on, the tempo settles into a brutal rhythm. Attack, pause, embarkation, silence. Those left behind watch those taken away without resentment. There is no energy left for envy, only calculation. In Paris, the evacuation is framed carefully. Statements emphasize success, coordination, resilience. Numbers are highlighted, losses are deferred. But beneath the language lies a truth that cannot be escaped. This is not recovery, it is preservation of what remains. The delayed order from weeks earlier has now reached its furthest consequence. It has stripped France of initiative, of territory, of confidence, and replaced them with necessity. As night approaches again, fewer men remain on the sand, fewer options remain anywhere else, and the war, once misjudged, is now unmistakable. Paris, late afternoon. The heat lingers in government buildings not designed for summer urgency. Windows are open, papers weighted down against a faint breeze. Somewhere nearby, traffic moves as usual. The city still behaves like a capital at war in theory, not in fact. Inside a cabinet room, men sit farther apart than before. Some uniforms, some suits. No one touches the water glasses set neatly in front of them. A map of northern France rests on an easel. Large sections are now shaded, not with enemy positions, but with uncertainty. The evacuation continues. That much is known. What comes after is not. Reports from the coast arrive in carefully measured language. Numbers extracted. Ships lost. Timelines extended. Each update sounds manageable on its own. Together, they form a different picture. A minister asks the question that has been avoided for days. What forces do we still control inside France? The answer is incomplete. Whole formations are gone, not destroyed, but displaced. Some are in Britain, others are scattered south, reorganizing without heavy equipment. Communications lag behind movement. Another question follows, quieter but more dangerous. Can the line be re-established? Military advisors exchange glances. The German advance has not slowed. It has widened. New axes of movement appear daily. Reserves that once existed on paper no longer exist in reality. Political pressure intensifies. Allies want assurance. The public wants calm. No one wants to say the word that is beginning to take shape in everyone's mind. Collapse. The decision comes not as a declaration, but as an acceptance. It is agreed, without formal vote, that France will not attempt to reconstitute a coherent northern front. Forces will fall back. Defense will be reorganized along new lines farther south. The rationale is pragmatic. Preserve what remains. Avoid annihilation. But the implication is profound. By conceding the North, the government accepts that the war has entered a new phase, one for which France is unprepared, materially and psychologically. No proclamation is made. No announcement explains the shift. But the moment the decision is internalized, the campaign as it was conceived ceases to exist. The shock arrives not in Paris but on the roads. Units retreating south encounter civilians moving in the opposite direction. Carts, cars, livestock, families, entire towns in motion. Roads clog. Progress slows to walking pace. Commanders attempt to impose order. Orders conflict. Some bridges are held, others are blown prematurely. Coordination dissolves under the weight of reality. German units exploit the chaos with precision, not rushing, selecting targets, cutting roads, bypassing resistance. The speed that once seemed unbelievable now feels relentless. For many soldiers, the realization is devastating. There will be no second line, no pause to regroup. The war is no longer something they are advancing into. It is something moving through them. That night, Paris dims its lights. Air raid precautions are enacted, though no bombs fall. The darkness feels symbolic, anticipatory. Inside offices and apartments, radios murmur with controlled optimism. Official statements emphasize continuity, resilience, determination. They avoid specifics. Privately, officials begin discussing contingencies that were unthinkable weeks earlier. Relocation, negotiation, survival. The delayed order that once seemed a minor hesitation now reveals its full scope. It did not merely cost a battle or a campaign. It removed the margin of choice. France is no longer deciding how to fight the war. It is deciding how to endure its consequences. And the most dangerous decision of all, what to do next, has yet to be made. A small town near Tours just before dawn. The building is modest, once administrative, now provisional. Curtains drawn, guards posted more for form than defense. Inside, a single room holds a long table, illuminated by desk lamps that cast hard shadows. Folders are arranged neatly. Too neatly. Men enter quietly, taking seats without greeting. Some wear uniforms that still carry the authority of command. Others wear civilian suits that now feel symbolic rather than practical. Outside, the war moves quickly. Inside, time slows. The briefing is short. German forces continue to advance. Communications degrade hourly. The southern defensive line exists mostly on paper. Allied support is uncertain, not absent, but distant, constrained by geography and timing. A senior officer speaks plainly. Continued resistance will likely result in further destruction without altering the outcome. Cities will be bombed, infrastructure lost, civilian casualties will rise sharply. Another voice responds with equal calm. Resistance preserves honor, alliance credibility, and the possibility, however slim, of future recovery. The room divides not into factions but into priorities: lives versus legitimacy, survival versus sovereignty. No one doubts the facts. The disagreement lies in what matters most now. The decision is framed as restraint. It is agreed that emissaries will be authorized to explore armistice terms. Not acceptance, exploration. The wording is careful. It preserves deniability. It allows leaders to tell themselves and the nation that nothing final has been chosen. But the moment authorization is given, the war changes character. Military operations slow, not by order but by implication. Commanders hesitate to commit units to actions that may soon be rendered meaningless. Aggressive defense becomes selective. Initiative drains away. The war is no longer fought for victory. It is fought to manage loss. News of the decision spreads unevenly. Some units hear nothing and continue fighting. Others receive hints, changes in tone, delays in orders, unexplained withdrawals. Rumors fill the gaps. Morale fractures. Soldiers who believe the fight is ending feel abandoned in their positions. Others feel relief tinged with shame. A few attempt last stands, driven by anger rather than strategy. German forces encounter pockets of resistance that feel disconnected, improvised, almost ceremonial. The enemy does not slow. As night falls, the provisional government prepares statements it may never deliver. Language is refined to avoid finality. Words like honor, necessity, and responsibility are tested, discarded, tested again. The delayed order from May now appears in hindsight not as an isolated mistake, but as the first crack in a chain of confidence. Each hesitation taught the next. Waiting became habit. Habit became policy. And now, faced with the most consequential decision of all, the instinct remains the same. Outside, the war continues, briefly. Inside, France has already crossed another threshold. The only thing left undecided is how the story will be told. A forest clearing near Compiègne. Morning light filters through tall trees, soft and indifferent. The air is cool. Birds can be heard in the distance. A railway carriage sits alone on a siding, polished, controlled, deliberately chosen for symbolism. Inside, chairs are arranged with precision. Papers rest on a narrow table. Everything is prepared for inevitability. No crowds gather, no flags are raised. This is not a ceremony. It is an ending. The atmosphere inside the carriage is restrained, almost formal. French representatives review documents already read many times. The terms are severe, but not surprising. Occupation, disarmament, concessions that will reshape the nation's future. There is no argument about the military reality anymore. That debate ended weeks ago, quietly in offices and command rooms where hesitation became precedent. What remains is interpretation. Is this an act of preservation or surrender? One official mentions civilians, another mentions prisoners. A third mentions the hope, fragile and unprovable, that acceptance now may spare greater suffering later. No one mentions the delayed order in May. No one needs to. The pen is lifted. For a brief moment, time seems to pause. Not because the decision is uncertain, but because its weight is finally visible. This is the last choice in a chain that began long before this room, long before this forest. The document is signed. With that motion, France exits the war it prepared for and enters a future it did not plan. There is no applause, no relief, only the quiet acknowledgement that the decision cannot be undone. The shock comes afterward, not immediately. News spreads across the country. Some hear it on radios, others from officers reading prepared statements. For many soldiers, the fighting simply stops. Abruptly, awkwardly, without resolution. Weapons are lowered, positions abandoned, orders cease to matter. The realization settles unevenly. The war did not end because it was lost on a battlefield alone. It ended because a sequence of decisions, each cautious, each defensible in isolation, removed every alternative. The delayed order was not fatal by itself. It was fatal because it taught the system to wait. In the days that follow, France grows silent. Not peaceful, just muted. Roads empty. Offices reopen under new authority. Maps are redrawn. People adjust because adjustment is what survival requires. History will later search for villains, heroes, explanations. It will debate tactics, personalities, ideology. But beneath all of that lies a simpler truth. The fate of France's army was sealed not by a single overwhelming blow, but by a night when certainty was demanded and caution was chosen instead. A delay measured in hours became consequences measured in years. And once belief fell behind reality, history did not wait.